I was looking through some pictures of different things that we had discovered down in Antarctica, and something kept coming back into my mind, an image, and I wondered why. And now I think I know what the big secret is they're hiding down in Antarctica. It's not a thing, and it's not a place. What they're hiding is an event. And you need to see a lot of different things from a lot of different perspectives to understand what happened down there and the frightening ramifications of it. Now, of course, what you're looking at here is one of the figures from Pompeii, something that happened so fast and so suddenly that we have been able to go back, and long after the bodies had decayed and rotted away, we could pour in plaster into the molds and see what these people were doing. And what was uncovered is that people were just going about their normal everyday lives. It wasn't a whole bunch of people running in terror. It happened that fast. It was over in a blink. And people were frozen literally in time. Now, what does that have to do with Antarctica? Well, who remembers this? You see, this is the double slit experiment. It shows what happens when you have a wave and it meets a barrier that has two tiny slits cut in it, how on the other side the waves create this diffraction pattern. And it's been used to show that light can not only act as a particle, light can act as a wave as well. And it's been the basis of quantum theory. Now, I want to show you guys something. See, I've been looking at these pictures in Antarctica from basically helicopter level view instead of straight down like from a satellite. And what, honest to God, it looks like here at this place is we had an area where water was flowing through channels. It was a large flow of water, and then all of a sudden, large impediments were put in the way. And as the water passed through, what we see is diffraction pattern. See, I've called it cross-hatching in the past. And what I think we are looking at here is water that was at some moment in time going through a diffraction, and then instantly the atmosphere was pulled off this planet and the surface was exposed directly to space. And of course, we know how cold that is. And that's quite provable for anybody who wants to debate that. If you don't think it gets colder as you go up to 60,000 feet, by all means, test that theory out. You can go get a balloon of your own and put a temperature gauge on it and send it up. And I guarantee after 5 or 10,000 feet, even though you would be floating closer to the sun, it would get a lot colder real quick. And I think that's what we're looking at here. That this is diffraction. This is water diffraction. As water would pass through these channels and diffract the waves, and it was at that moment in time frozen instantly. And that there's evidence down there, much like in Pompeii, that shows people or activities that were frozen at the moment they were doing whatever they were doing. And this is what they're trying to cover up. Now, I know it's crazy. It's a theory that probably will get ridiculed to no end, but, and we've had 1,000 years or so of wind and weather and all sorts of things to affect how these look. But if you really look at this and you really do the study, because this particular thing right here is all over and not everywhere. It seems like places that clearly were ports or places that were clearly rivers have this. And we see this in flowing water today. You can do this for yourself. It's not a hard experiment to do at home. See, this area that I'm talking about right here was a perplexing one for this reason. I had found an entire field of these hidden corners, so to speak. And the only thing that I found of note was down here. And this looks very, very much like an entrance. And it almost looks like there's something, some kind of an antenna unit, something smaller above it. But I'm going to take you another place real quick where I think we can actually see a survivor of this event. Because, of course, in an event like this, there would have been people underground that might have survived. There might have been pockets where air remained for whatever reason. And it's right here. It was an area that I neglected. I had found one little tiny section of cable or tunnel, whatever, and one hidden corner, and that was it. It was very, very odd. Not very much uncovered in high definition here. But in this one small spot, if we look really close, and I'm going to have to change the angle here to get this just right. Because that's the kind of thing about pareidolia, is that, I've said this before, if it looks like it's a face looking straight down from space, the people on the surface wouldn't see it that way. But I think we can clearly see a head here. It looks like two arms maybe folded behind, looking out this way. It's just a very strange, out of place event in the snow here. And one thing that I did to kind of do a control, I went up to Greenland, and you would think an ice-covered continent on the north side of a ball would pretty much you would see the same types of things as an ice-covered continent on the south side of a ball. The two areas are equidistant to the sun. So you would think you would see at least some level of things being alike. Congruence, I guess, would be the word. And it's a very different place. The North Pole, the ice there, the way the landscape is there, is an entirely different world. You'd think you're on another planet. So clearly something very, very different happened here. But this is exactly what I think this is. And of course, I'll put the coordinates down in the description. But it's the only thing I could find there other than, of course, this evidence of a tunneling system here. And this is a very small section that was very, very faint. In fact, you can barely see it at all in these pictures. See if I can find a more pronounced section. It's almost impossible to see. It's right here. But I'll go ahead and leave start and end points for this too. I might have actually drawn the line directly over it here. I accidentally did that a couple times. But a couple other places. Oh, I know what else I wanted to show you before we get out of this. It's this thing with shadows, and I've taken a lot of heat about, shadows don't do this and shadows don't do that. Well, here's a real good example. And let me get the angle down here so that we can look like we would actually be there and not, flying above it from space. Okay, now clearly we're casting a shadow that way, away from us. See if I can zoom this out a little bit. There we go. And if you look, you can follow and you can match things up. Now, the sun would actually be behind us and to our right. So you can see the patterns as they progress, and you can follow them in a way that makes sense. Now, the reason I have this labeled EX ridge is I call it example ridge, because everything matches up. It's perfect. It's literally, no matter what angle you look at this from, when you follow this, everything is represented properly. This little divot right down here, this little rise here, going up to the top here, this angle down here, and where it angles all the way down to the edge. There's absolutely nothing strange about this ridge. So when we find places like this over here, and we see these shadows that are from this ridge, there's a very odd, let's see if I can get this on the proper angle. There's a shadow right here of what looks like a large gun type structure, a large cylindrical feature that's sticking up on top of a ridge right here that has nothing matching it from the top of what would be the corresponding ridge, as we can see here as well. Looks like a lone figure standing on top of a ridge. And as we of course can see, this is what we're looking at, and there's nothing corresponding to that. And down here, we see a couple of things like that as well. Here, of course, we see the sun behind us, and we can follow this ridge up, and all of a sudden here, this domes up on the top, as if there's some structure here that's been scrubbed out. And down here, on this lower part of the ridge, where this should be flat, we see a smaller dome as well. So this is just sloppy scrub work. This is just where somebody went in, took something out, and forgot, oh my gosh, I have to actually cover the shadows too. Because that's the allegation people have made with these, quote unquote, what I describe as hidden corners, that they're just mistakes, that people have just been sloppy. And I agree. Maybe that's the case, but they were sloppy in their attempt to hide something. And I think that was pretty much, we covered everything there. This will be the one last thing that I'll leave you with. It is actually incredibly difficult to find exact center here at the South Pole. And my question would be this, and I'm not being smart alecky here. I really have an honest question. Why is it so hard if it's a ball, if it's a planet, okay? And people have said, well, you know, there's just imaging hiccups. Is there a front side and a back side and a top side and a bottom side of a golf ball? Is it, I mean, do you have to find the front of the golf ball and set it on the tee, aiming it downrange? Of course not. It's no harder to look at one side of a golf ball than it is the other side of a golf ball. So if we're a ball, there should be no reason flying a satellite over here should cause any hiccup in the imaging, whether you're at the South Pole or any other point on the planet. Now, as you zoom in here, on exact center, this little red line I put here because it was really hard to get a pin to drop on it. But for some reason, it made it easier to draw a line. As you can see, here's where it starts to do all this funky crap. And if you keep your cursor on it and zoom in real slow, and make sure you're zooming exact center, all of a sudden, the lights go out on dead center. I can't explain why this would be the case. I have no honest to God reason in my mind that makes any sense to logic as to why we can perfectly image the North Pole. But for some reason down here, dead center, we cannot get any kind of reasonable imagery. And there's all sorts of excuses why. But if I'm not mistaken, the reason they call it the equator means that at that point it is the halfway point between the North and South Pole. Therefore, it is just as easy to fly from the equator to the South Pole distance-wise as it is from the equator to the North Pole distance-wise. I hate to give the flat earthers all of this ammunition, but there's a couple of points here I think that need to be made, and that's one of them. I don't, and I have to zoom back out here. Also, I also don't understand this. Why this ring shows up down here. There's actually two rings. There's an inner ring. There's actually, I think, three. Hold on. There's a real tiny ring in the middle, then there's this secondary ring, and then there's this tertiary ring way out here at the edge. And when you zoom in on it, I don't understand why this even needs to be here if it's artificial. I mean, what's the point of this? What does it demarcate? And you can click all the different layers in, the borders, the labels, the ocean, the everything. It doesn't come up as anything. It's not marked as, at this point, you will run into the firmament, It doesn't say that, but nevertheless, it exists in their imagery. And I guess I would just I'm scratching my head at the purpose of it. Because why some random distance out do they decide they need to put that? And then, of course, in some places, way out here, they do it even farther out. So, I mean, if they really wanted to shoot down the flat earthers, they're doing a really, really, really bad job of it. In fact, they're pretty much making their argument for them. Given that, I mean, and I'll zoom out here, you can see all of the things that I've found down here, and virtually nothing at the North Pole. Even with Greenland. I've found almost exactly nothing up there. All of these cable structures, these tunnel structures, all of these hidden corners, non-existent. And I searched the whole friggin' continent of Greenland to find anything that remotely looked like this down here. And I didn't find anything. So I think what they're doing is they're hiding the evidence of an event, of a major event that literally froze the planet at some point instantly. And of course, at some point through volcanic activity or whatever reason, we regained an atmosphere and things warmed up in certain places. But it looks like at some point, and if anybody wants to know where we're at here, here's the part here that goes up to Argentina. And this area we were just looking at is over here. And there's these three stations. And the area that I started out was over here. And it also looks very artificial too, because we have this perfectly straight line right here that runs up to what looks like artificially created structures. And then it's here that where I found this cave that we started with, that if you just pan up, you'll find these, let's see if I can find it again. Here it is. It's up here on this main ridge. What looks like evidence of the double slit experiment, the diffraction, that shows that light can act like both a wave and a particle, and you can find this in how energy propagates through water. So, 20 minutes. We'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for your support. I appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. Special access, need to know, Wednesday. We're going to get up that video pretty quick for the Patreon guys. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.